welcome to the deep dive. So you, our listener, have brought us to a really fascinating corner of intimacy today. You're going to be exploring oral sex and foreplay with illustrations by Miss Lyra. It seems your interest is really in getting that practical, detailed knowledge, about enhancing intimacy beyond just penetration.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're aiming for.
So that's what we're setting out to uncover.
And this book, well, as Miss Lyra presents it, it really aims to be a reliable guide to pleasure. It draws on her experiences as both a dominatrix and, interestingly, a tantric sex guru.
Right.
It promises to offer very specific techniques for using, the mouth and fingers to pleasure a lover.
Okay, let's get right into it then. Our mission in this deep dive is basically to navigate through Miss Lyra's advice and pull out those actionable techniques. We're talking oral sex, fingering for both women and men.
And we'll be paying close attention to the anatomical bits she brings up.
Yeah, the details.
And the step-by-step instructions she lays out. And crucially, keeping in mind the vital roles of communication and, well, genuine enthusiasm.
Absolutely, because that's what really makes these intimate moments special, isn't it? It's not just mechanics.
Exactly. It's about understanding what actually contributes to pleasure and connection. The illustrations, even though we can't see them here, they suggest a very hands-on, practical approach to learning these techniques.
Right. Okay, so let's dive straight into oral sex for women. Miss Lyra makes it clear, pretty much from the start, this isn't just about, random tongue movements.
No, she definitely emphasizes that there's a real art and skill involved.
So it's fascinating right off the bat is her focus on what she calls foreplay before foreplay.
Ah, yes. She stresses the importance of non-explicit touch first. So things like touching the neck, the hips, inner thighs,
Right.
along with kissing and even verbal affirmations before any direct sexual contact.
And the idea is that this initial non-sexual touch actually helps release oxytocin, right? That sort of bonding hormone.
Exactly. It creates a sense of intimacy and safety, which then makes the more direct sexual touch even more pleasurable later on.
It makes sense. It's all about building that arousal
Yeah.
and getting the blood flowing to the right areas. She even mentions the partner's comfort and suggests using massage oil.
Yeah, she specifically calls out coconut oil as her personal favorite.
Which is popular, but it does make you wonder, are there other options? Maybe if someone has sensitivities or just prefers something different?
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah, coconut oil is popular, sure, natural properties and all that, but preferences really vary. Other natural oils like maybe almond or jojoba could work, or, standard water-based or silicone-based lubes depending on comfort and what kind of touch you're doing. The key is just using something that enhances things and avoids irritation.
Makes total sense. Now, Ms. Lyra brings up a pretty crucial point about checking for readiness.
Aye.
She gives a very specific way to gauge if a woman is truly aroused. She advises checking if the vagina feels, and I quote, really sticky, wet, and hot.
Not just a little, but really so.
Exactly. And if it's not quite there yet, she has this great piece of advice. Just politely ask if you can continue with that pre-foreplay stuff until she's genuinely feeling more turned on.
It's all about respecting her body's natural rhythm, which is so important.
Definitely. So before getting into the actual technique, she touches on female anatomy basics, mentioning the external areas, labia, clitoris.
Yeah. Right. The excerpt doesn't dive super deep into internal aspects, but she acknowledges their relevance, as context. And it's worth remembering the clitoris itself has this incredibly high concentration of nerve endings.
Making it exceptionally sensitive to touch.
Precisely.
So where does she suggest we even begin with oral sex itself? Well, she starts by saying that fingers will likely be involved at some point.
And she even throws in a mention of sex toys as potential enhancers, which is, interesting context.
Yeah. But the tongue, as Miss Lyra puts it, is the star of the show.
Right. And she differentiates between techniques aimed at building sensation without necessarily leading to immediate orgasm. She calls them endurance techniques.
Okay.
And those designed for, let's say, a more explosive finish. So the key insight here is really that it's not just about going for the climax straight away.
There's value in exploring and building that arousal first.
Exactly.
Okay, let's get into those tongue techniques for sensation then. First up is what she calls eating the clitoris, like ice cream.
Ha! Yeah, it's a vivid image.
She suggests using your lips to create a seal, and then licking, kind of like you're catching drips, making sure to include the inner labia in this gentle approach.
It really emphasizes that focus on building sensation, that sort of casual, leisurely pace.
And she reminds you to keep those hands busy with non-explicit touch too, right? Like Gently rimming the inner thighs, pressing on the lower stomach.
Yeah, to keep the blood flowing and maintain that overall sense of arousal. It's a holistic approach, really, not just zeroing in on one spot.
Good point. Then she moves on to focusing on the entrance of the vagina. Now, she notes this alone might not be intensely stimulating for most women,
Right.
so she advises keeping the fingers on the clitoris at the same time. She describes a couple of tongue movements here.
Uh-huh. There's a deep hooking motion upwards towards the pelvic bone, which she says simulates the G-spot.
The strawberry shoelace analogy, trying to hook it out with your tongue, it really gives you a sense of the direction and depth.
Precisely. It's about applying pressure in a specific direction, to stimulate those internal nerve endings. And then there's the flatter lick over the entrance, not too deep.
Or even just focusing on the lower labia. She calls this an endurance lick, like licking a pane of glass.
Yeah, or a circular tongue motion, again, like pressed against glass. These different techniques offer varied sensations, help maintain arousal longer.
And she brings it back to the clitoris, reiterating that women generally don't prefer hard, direct contact, especially not right at the start.
No. And she offers a helpful guide for finding it, gently running your fingers upwards from the vaginal entrance until you find that bump.
And the dip between the index and middle finger becomes the sweet spot for placing the clitoris.
Right. She mentions the vertical attachment of the clitoris and suggests using your fingers in a roughly vertical direction, moving in a clockwise motion, maybe about a 1-inch diameter initially.
And she points out that as arousal increases, you can become a bit less specific.
So the key insight for clitoral stimulation seems to be variety and, crucially, avoiding that direct, hard pressure. Gentle exploration first, then build intensity with different motions.
It's all about finding that sweet spot of pressure and movement. Miss Lyra recommends combining these techniques for, about 5 to 15 minutes?
Yeah, something like that, before either moving on to penetrative sex, and she always says start with fingers, even briefly,
Right.
or intensifying the oral and finger play to build towards orgasm. It's like building a crescendo in music, Start soft, gradually increase intensity.
Okay, good analogy. So we built the foundation. Now let's shift into high gear, as she puts it, the techniques aimed at achieving orgasm.
All right. And again, she emphasizes the importance of internal finger play before anything else.
What's interesting is how she presents these high gear techniques, almost like a progression from slightly less to more intense.
Mm-hmm. And she even touches on female squirting, acknowledging it often takes practice and the woman's active participation.
Okay, so her first high gear technique involves using one hand on the clitoris, with that placement we talked about, in the crease of the index and middle finger, but with a more vigorous circular motion.
Right. And at the same time, the other hand uses a gentle upward hook inside the vagina to stroke the G-spot, that ridged, spongy lump, maybe size of half an egg, on the front wall, a few inches in.
And she stresses licking all around the outer labia during this.
She also advises spreading your internal fingers occasionally to hit the sides of the G-spot. And a crucial point, if the goal is clitoral orgasm, don't press too hard internally, because that can take away from the clitoral stimulation. It's about finding that delicate balance, stimulating both areas without one overpowering the other.
Got it. Balance. Okay, then she offers a variation.
Yeah, loosening that internal finger hook, moving the tongue to the vaginal entrance, and using flatter pressure on the clitoris with the fingers. It's about alternating the stimulation, keeps things interesting, potentially hits different nerve endings.
Right, for more intense sensation.
Yeah.
Now, for the technique, he says, will almost certainly bring her to the edge of orgasm. Sounds promising.
Uh-huh. This involves one hand gently pulling upwards on the lower stomach or the top of the vulva to kind of lengthen the vagina,
Okay.
while the other hand uses that hooking motion internally. And the tongue goes flat against the clitoris, moving in clockwise circles with increasing pressure and penetration as arousal builds.
This, she says, should lead to a clitoral climax like never before. And then she dives into the squirting technique.
Yes. And first, the crucial element, communication. The woman needs to understand that as she feels close to orgasm, she should actively push her pelvic muscles down.
Like she's trying to urinate, she says.
Exactly. It requires conscious engagement of those muscles.
And it's important to note here, as Miss Lyra does, that the fluid isn't urine, right? Even though it comes from the same opening.
Correct. It comes from the same opening, the urethra, but it's a different fluid, more analogous to semen in men, not urine.
Good clarification. So with that understanding, the tongue does that same flat, circular motion on the clitoris.
But the internal fingers hook more firmly, she says, as if you are hanging onto a climbing wall.
Oh.
And there's more pressure and rubbing on the G-spot with minimal but not zero penetration. The other hand, instead of pulling up, pushes down slightly on the lower stomach.
And this combination, she suggests, can induce an incredibly intense orgasm and potentially skirting. It sounds like a much more forceful and coordinated approach.
It definitely does.
Okay, let's shift gears. Moving on to blowjobs. Miss Lyra again starts with the importance of foreplay.
Always back to foreplay.
Right. Emphasizing enthusiasm, visual cues, verbal communication, touch, and emotion before any physical contact with the penis.
And she believes starting after the penis is already fully erect actually enhances the experience. So just like the foreplay for women, there's a similar need to build arousal and connection first.
Okay, let's delve into her pre-oral techniques for men then. First, she says, prepare yourself.
Yeah, stressing the absolute importance of the giver's enthusiasm and sexual receptivity. She even suggests getting yourself feeling fucking fabulous and confident,
Yeah.
which she believes releases pheromones that further turn him on. It really highlights the psychological aspect, doesn't it? Your own mindset can massively impact the experience.
Definitely. She has some interesting ideas for boosting confidence, too, like dancing in front of a mirror.
And she highlights the power of verbalization, telling him what you want to do, how excited you are, really connecting with that desire.
And I love this one. The element of surprise, with unexpectedly lewd comments during normal conversation.
Oh yeah, the satay example. This satay is delicious, followed by, not as delicious as your dick, I'll save some space.
It's bold. Certainly attention-grabbing for some.
Definitely. But it's also worth considering, humor and communication styles vary hugely. That might not land well with everyone.
Fair point. Test the waters, maybe.
Yeah.
She also emphasizes non-directly sexual touching. First, the groin, bum, hips.
Gentle but enthusiastic massage, making sure your hands are warm. Kissing and licking around the penis, especially inner thighs, also gets mentioned. Rimming suggested for later.
It's about gradually building intimacy, focusing on the whole body, not just the genitals right away.
Makes sense. So when he's finally ready to erect penis, maybe some pre-cum, it's time for all mouth.
Okay. Miss Lyra stresses moving your mouth like it's a vagina, trying to avoid teeth by bending lips inwards.
Firm sucking is key, she says, with most pressure focused on the head for increased sensitivity.
And lubrication is crucial here. Saliva's good, and she mentions gagging can actually increase saliva production.
That's an interesting, if slightly awkward tip.
Huh. Yeah. She advises starting with these basics before moving to more explosive techniques. And for men seeking maximum sensation, she suggests trimming or waxing.
Which can certainly make the experience smoother and potentially more sensitive for him.
Now, let's talk about hands. Miss Lyra generally focuses on hands for, no longer than a minute initially?
All right.
Before combining them with the mouth.
Right, and she emphasizes caressing the entire area, ass, balls, shaft, head, thighs, stomach, to encourage blood flow. It's a whole body experience.
She advises using your stronger hand at the base of the shaft when giving oral. Compares it to a cock ring for blood flow.
But warns against holding it statically. Needs to move. Gentle but firm up and down motions are recommended, alternating grip tightness for sensitivity. That dynamic movement is key.
Okay, and a great technique she describes is using that firm hand at the base while your mouth is on the head. And then using your other hand to either caress his balls or delicately run fingers on the shaft between the base and your mouth creates different sensations simultaneously along the penis.
Nice. And for a more advanced technique, she suggests using both hands on the shaft with a twisting motion.
Yeah, like wringing a towel, she says, in time with your mouth. As you move upwards, one twist with your top hand catches the bottom of the head. Provides a different sensation.
She uses that muscle confusion analogy.
Right, explaining how heightened variability can increase sensitivity. It's not just physical stim, it's engaging different nerve endings quickly, maybe preventing desensitization, leading to a more intense experience.
Interesting. Then she talks about moving your mouth down to the base of the shaft.
Taking the head in your dominant hand and using an upward twisting motion on the head. While you're at the base, you can either lick and kiss around it, or move further down to the balls.
And she gives a tip for ball sucking. Open your mouth wide. Gently try to move one ball in. Low angle helps with gravity. That change in focus could create a surprising and intense sensation.
Eye contact, she emphasizes, is always highly appreciated by men during oral sex.
Yeah, conveys enthusiasm, willingness, makes them feel desired. That visual connection can really enhance the intimacy.
Definitely. Finally, we get to deep throat. Miss Lyra is very upfront about this being difficult, requiring practice.
Yeah, she suggests training your gag reflex by gradually getting comfortable putting fingers down your throat, which, is practical advice.
But totally optional. Should only be pursued if both partners are enthusiastic and comfortable. That needs saying.
Absolutely. She even recommends practicing with a flexible jelly dildo while lying on your back, head over the edge of the bed to straighten the throat.
And getting used to rhythmic breath holding is also key. Once those steps are mastered, then maybe move on to practicing with your partner.
Right. It's presented as an advanced skill for a reason.
Okay, let's move on to fingering. Ms. Lyra describes fingers as magical tools when used correctly.
But also capable of causing discomfort if not. So care is needed. And she stresses that foreplay before foreplay applies here too. Touch less sexual areas first.
General preparation. Partner, aroused, receptive, comfortable, warm. Wash hands. Good point about salt and sweat being irritating.
And again, expressing enthusiasm and desire. Paramount. She highlights skin-to-skin contact for releasing oxytocin, especially for women.
She suggests gliding fingers on the neck, spine, thighs, lips, nipples, avoiding direct vaginal touch initially.
Observing body cues is crucial. Heat, erect nipples, faster breathing or pulse. And massage for at least 5–10 minutes before sexual touch, using an oil like coconut oil, is highly recommended. Builds relaxation and anticipation.
Moving to less explicit genital areas involves massaging inner thighs, around the bum, between thighs, lower stomach, hips, boosting blood flow.
Nipple play. Start gentle pinching, adding surprise by varying touch, unexpected places. Also effective.
Pressure variation, gentle to firm over 5–10 minutes, another tip. And for those into it, she mentions fingers in the mouth or light choking.
With consent, obviously. Always consent.
Always. She also notes having a partner suck on your index middle finger can enhance hardness during intercourse for men. Interesting side note.
Addressing impatience is important too. She reiterates checking for readiness, that really hot and sticky vagina.
And emphasizes just asking your partner what they want. Open communication really is the thread through all of this, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's the foundation.
Okay, now for fingering the vagina and anus in women specifically, plenty of lubrication, warm hands, essential starters.
She suggests starting by massaging the vagina, using both fingers and thumbs for variety, massaging towards areas where you want to increase blood flow. Using the insides of thumbs on the labia towards the clitoris is a specific tip.
The key areas for direct stimulation are the anus, vaginal opening, and clitoris, she says, with a focus primarily on the clitoris and vaginal opening.
Right. For clitoral stimulation with fingers, she recommends a 2-finger technique, index and middle, or maybe ring and middle, using the last 2 joint sections slightly flattened.
Following the curve of the pelvic bone. Apparently best when lying alongside or facing each other.
Yeah, the angle matters. Adjustments are needed if you're sitting between her legs.
Okay. She describes situating the clitoris in the gap between your fingers and moving in a rhythmic, clockwise motion, catching the clit with your longest finger on the way up.
Practice and open communication are key here. These are guidelines, remember, not rigid rules. Experiment, pay attention to reactions.
Good reminder. Combining clitoral and vaginal stimulation, she notes, significantly increases effectiveness.
Yeah, using that 2-finger clitoral technique while also inserting a finger or toy internally is highly recommended.
And for one-handed clitoral stimulation during penetration, she suggests using the flat of the thumb. Less direct pressure, more natural angle maybe.
She also offers variations for clitoral stimulation, bringing to tension, then gently releasing for 30 seconds.
Like edging.
Kind of. Or a single middle finger flat massage, grouping 3 fingers to stroke upwards, provides variation, releases tension.
Okay. For internal vaginal fingering, she advises lying between the legs for the correct angle. The main technique here is for G-spot stimulation.
With the rhythm ideally matching the clitoral stimulation if possible. She recommends hooking the flats of your ring and middle, or index and middle, fingers upwards towards the back of the pubic bone to find the G-spot, that ridged, squishy bump.
And treat it similarly to the clitoris regarding pressure and angle. Using the flats of fingers, slight bend.
Exactly. The motion is primarily penetration with friction and fairly firm pressure. But always, always check for comfort and pleasure.
Communication again. Now, anal play in women. She suggests it can start after initial warm-up massage, but vaginal play first is generally recommended.
unless specifically desired otherwise. And the caution about infection is crucial. Wash fingers thoroughly after anal play before returning to the vagina.
Very important. Start gently, plenty of lube, massage around the asshole with the middle finger initially, combined with clitoral stimulation.
This can lead to orgasm via the clitoral stimulation, she notes, and it's a good way to get used to the sensation of anal penetration.
Okay. Turning now to fingers on your man. Ms. Lyra reminds us that massage and running fingers in less sexual areas still apply. Maximize blood flow to penis and anus.
Men may require more pressure than women, generally speaking, and again, expressing enthusiasm and desire is key.
When he's ready, visually, apparent lubrication is important. Don't be scared to use a lot, she says. Your own spit from gagging, or coconut oil.
Right. For hand techniques on the penis, she emphasizes flow and rhythm, imagining your hands as a vagina.
A basic technique uses both hands. Less dominant hand pulls back foreskin, or at the base if circumcised. Other on top half head.
Using a twisting upwards and downwards motion while pulling upwards. Start gently, build intensity, and she makes a great point. Observe and replicate his own self-stimulation techniques. That's a brilliant way to learn his preferences.
Smart. She also suggests using your dominant hand to rub the entirety of the head, medium to light pressure, while the lower hand provides bulk of pressure, that cock ring effect.
And don't forget other areas. Cupping balls, inner thighs, the gooch, it's the perineum between genitals and anus.
Right. Combine this with oral sex on the balls. Light fingertip touches can create shivers during build-up stages, too.
Okay, finally, anal fingering in men. Important to discuss it beforehand if it's not spontaneous.
Definitely. Start with the middle or index finger, whichever feels comfortable. Insert maybe 1-2 inches in, towards the front, the direction of the penis.
Well, you'll find the prostate. She describes it as smoother, rubbery, hard, flat ball with a vertical dip.
Massage it like a woman's G-spot. 1 or 2 fingers, firm pressure, circular motions. Combine this with dominant hand stimulation of the penis head, increasing pressure and speed as orgasm approaches.
And importantly, pull fingers out slowly afterward.
Okay, wow. That was a lot of detail. As we wrap up this deep dive into Miss Lyra's techniques, let's recap some key takeaways.
Yeah, definitely. We've explored the huge importance of foreplay, even that foreplay before foreplay, understanding anatomical differences in sensitivity.
Right, and those really detailed techniques for using both tongue and fingers for women and men. That clitoral stimulation insight variety, avoiding direct hard pressure, starting gentle, seems key.
Absolutely. And we've also highlighted again and again the significance of open communication and genuine enthusiasm. Plus, we touched on the potential for exploring anal play.
And remember, none of these techniques really matter if you're not checking in with your partner, making sure they're actually enjoying it. That communication loop is vital.
Couldn't agree more. So here's maybe a provocative thought for you, our listener, to mull over. Consider how incorporating even just 1 or 2 of these detailed techniques while really openly communicating with your partner about it,
Yeah.
how that could potentially enhance your intimate experiences and maybe deepen your understanding of each other's desires.
What new avenue of exploration might feel most exciting or intriguing to you right now?
Exactly. And remember, the goal here is just providing options and ideas. You can experiment at your own pace, your own comfort level, no pressure.
Great final thought. Lots to think about there.